I'm Jason Gilbo here at Fantasy Football Cafe, diving into the NFC North. Pretty talented fantasy division, in my opinion. You got the Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, and then you got the Minnesota Vikings. Bridgewater's look nice. Mike Wall's coming off a nice fantasy season, getting Peterson back. But I'm taking a look at the Detroit Lions today. Last year, a little banged up. He had Reggie Bush, who never got going. He is out in San Francisco now. Joique Bell missed some games. You saw a lot of Theo Riddick in the passing game. Didn't run the ball that often because they had nothing established. But that should change here in 2015. Calvin Johnson, never quite healthy, 100%. He missed 3 games. Still put up a decent season. Really nice stretch down towards the end of the year there, which helped out Stafford quite a bit in the later weeks. But really not an efficient passing attack. Golden Tate had a nice season, but didn't find the end zone too much, which was an issue for me. Looking forward, you should see a balanced attack. I'm looking for more of a balance, ranking around the 15th to 18th in rushing attempts and passing attempts, because last season was pretty heavily leaning towards the passing game. I mean, Stafford threw 602 times, 5th most in the league, only threw 22 touchdowns. It's a pretty disappointing ratio for me, and also finished 21st in QB rating. So a stable running game there, adding a lineman in the draft in the first round should be slightly more efficient. I would really like to see, and I think he has some upside with everyone healthy and a nice core around him coming into 2015. I mean, he's got all the weapons. Golden Tate, Calvin Johnson, they benefit from each other. Stafford, good enough to really bring out the best in them. And then you got Eric Ebron going into his second year. Real disappointing first year. Very young, only 22 years old, I believe. A beast in college. Never really got it going. But he is a guy to keep an eye on during the season. He's really not been drafted, and everything I've seen in mocks and auctions, he hasn't really gone so far yet. And he's a guy to keep an eye on for targets in the early weeks. Calvin Johnson hobbled for 2014. Rebound year, definitely in the makings. I think a 1,300-yard season, 10-plus touchdowns is very doable again for him. And he's going in the second round, and I think that's very good production. It's a great value pick if you look at him compared to the other fantasy wide receivers, because the upside is there, obviously. So he can put in that monster year still, despite going into, an age 30 season. So real high ceiling for him. Awesome value pick. Golden Tate really looked good last season, but find the end zone definitely knocks down his value for me. I don't believe he's going to find the end zone much this season. I think you're going to see a much stabler running game, and if Ebron comes into things, you're really going to see Tate struggle to find the end zone. Really like him in PPR leagues because he's a pretty safe receptions guy. The yards after catch are really impressive, but finding the end zone's been the biggest issue. I really don't like him in standard formats all that much at his ADP. Stafford really being overlooked this year in drafts. I think he's a steal in the later rounds. 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns is a really safe floor for him. And if all goes well, I think you could really see 30 touchdowns from him. Needs to knock down the INTs, become a little more consistent. But I think Abdullah is going to really help in the screen game, as well as Riddick. Of course, a healthy Johnson there is going to do wonders for him. As it always has. Looking at the running game, really shifted focus towards Amir Abdullah. Joique Bell coming off surgery in the offseason, and Bell's really dropped off my list because he's either going to get carries as a starter coming into the year, taken away and kind of cut into by Riddick and Abdullah, and then eventually I believe Abdullah's going to steal the job from him, if not very early in the season. So Abdullah's already made noise in the preseason, breaking off that monster game, setting the fantasy world ablaze. I watched him a lot in college, big workhorse in the run game and the passing game, which is a lot to see. Needs to work on his pass protection, which will get him more times on the field than not if he does so. And I believe he's going to head for a huge role at some point during the season, hopefully sooner rather than later. Jumping into the defensive side of things real quick, still carry a top 15 defense. You'll probably flirt with maybe 10 or 12, I would say. Maybe could creep up higher if all things go well. Just with last year and all their defensive losses, Sue not being there, they're not going to recreate a real dominant defense like they did before, but still pretty valuable. I don't like him. I don't like drafting him. There's other guys or other teams I'd rather grab later on if you're focusing on a defense. So Overall, Lions quite a few fantasy-worthy players. Love Abdullah and Johnson. Golden Tate, ceiling's not high enough for me to really go after him at his ADP. Ebron's the guy I'm going to keep an eye on. Real athletic tight end who needs to make a jump this year, or we could very well see another Brandon Pettigrew who just disappears. So a more efficient year will lead to bigger numbers from the core guys in Detroit.